Hello everyone, welcome back to this episode of Flying Escapes. Today we're going to fly to one of Canada's lesser-known national parks. It's located in southern Alberta on the U.S.-Canadian border. And it's well off the beaten path. In fact, most Americans are not even familiar with this park, and even fewer have visited the area. But for me, it's my favorite place in the world to visit, and I'm going to show you exactly why.
It's the game. It'll be as if they'd dipped themselves in magic waters. The memories will be so thick, they'll have to brush them away from their faces.
So one of the main reasons for heading to Waterton this year was to find my very first employer. This is a lady I worked for when I was 14 years old, over 53 years ago. I wanted to reconnect and find out how she was doing. Second, we are also going to show what makes this place so special and why I think it's Canada's best kept secret, this little slice of paradise. Next, we're going to talk about the logistics of flying into Canada, what it takes to get there, which airports are going to be the best to fly into, and whether you need a car rental or not. We'll also talk about lodging and dining. But just know that this is not a foodie destination. Finally, we'll talk about the Kino Wildfire that occurred in 2017, destroyed nearly 40% of the park's habitat. It came within 100 yards of the burning down the town site itself. But first, I want to talk about a pilot error I made nearly 8 years ago while flying to Waterton, which almost cost me my life. And this is why it's taking me 8 years to return, a place that I traditionally would return to every year. It's difficult for pilots to talk about the errors they've made during their flying careers, especially the ones that are so extreme. It's an event I don't like to discuss, but was by far the worst decision I have ever made as a pilot. So why discuss it? It's in the past. When I was a resident in training in general surgery at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York, once a week, all the surgeons would get together and have what we called an M&M conference. This stood for morbidity and mortality. We talked about all the complications and deaths from the previous week and problem cases. The whole purpose of this conference was to learn from these complications. The same goes for airplane accident analysis. By studying accidents, hopefully we can learn from others' mistakes. 8 years ago, we were headed from Medford to Lethbridge, Alberta, direct over the Rockies and Glacier National Park. I got a briefing that morning, which forecast low clouds and mountain obscuration over Kalispell with tops around 10 to 11,000 feet. There was a significant tailwind at the time, nearly 30 to 40 knots. I figured I would be able to climb with the Bonanza over these clouds, no problem if needed, to 14 or even 15,000 feet. There was one PIREP of icing in that vicinity that morning. I also figured I could turn around if the clouds got too high. I didn't know what I didn't know about mountain flying at the time. As forecast, we encountered clouds well below us as we headed towards the Rockies, and looking ahead, it didn't seem that they were that high. However, as we proceeded east, the clouds rapidly started to rise in every direction, and at about 14,000 feet, I couldn't climb above the clouds any further, and soon we were in IMC over the Rockies. It wasn't long before we started to pick up ice on the wings and windshield. I was about 10 minutes from the prairies, and I was very familiar with the mountain peaks in that area, the highest being around 10,500 feet, and it was well to the east of us. I decided at this point to descend through the soup and try and lose some of the rime ice. At about 11,000 feet, it started to break off. We continued at 11,000 feet for what seemed like an eternity, until we finally blew through the storm front just on the east side of the Rockies. We were clear and over the prairies, but very shaken and humbled. Lesson learned, never fly over clouds, over mountains, especially when you have a tailwind pushing those clouds faster than you can climb. It took me 8 years to get enough courage to take that same route. About Waterton. So let's talk about the fun stuff. Why is Waterton so special and such a well-kept secret? I was born in Calgary, Alberta, and grew up in southern Alberta until I was about 13 years old. In the early 60s, my grandfather bought a cabin in Waterton Park, and we would spend every summer as kids exploring and enjoying its magnificence. It's really a kid's paradise. The town is small enough that you can walk from one side of the town to the other in about 15 minutes. It's where all my best memories from childhood were made. For me, the most spiritual place on earth and what I call home. Parents could leave their kids to wander and explore the town without any worries. All summer, we would use our bikes, go hiking, fishing, water skiing, backpacking, and kayaking. We were never bored. In 1970, my parents bought our own cabin, and by this time, we had moved to Mexico for my father's work, so we would spend our winters in Mexico and 3 months of summer in Waterton. It's also where I had my first full-time job, working at the local grocery store, Wendy's. I was working as a stock boy for 3 summers. On this trip, we're going to try and find Wendy.
It's the fire in the rain. It's the smile within the pain. It's the logic but insane. You cannot know from where it came. It's the way you cross the floor before you head on out the door. It's the figure on the wall. So many times I heed the call. It's the silence of the room, the way you turn before you bloom. Another shadow for the night. Think I'm gonna lose my mind. Although I'm running up a hill, I feel I'm always standing still. Can't remember where I've been. I don't know where I should begin. I don't know where I should begin. I don't know where I should begin.
So flying there. When considering a flight to Waterton, there are basically 4 main options when flying from the States. The best option, I believe, is flying into Lethbridge, Alberta. It's the closest airport to the park, and you can clear customs here with just a phone call. There are a couple of really good FBOs that provide rental cars also. Flying into Canada is relatively easy once you've filled out all the proper paperwork and filed the proper flight plans. After landing, all you have to do is call CanPass and they will issue a number. Returning, however, to the States is a little bit more of a hassle. You have to fly into certain airports where they have customs agents, and you have to make a reservation and land within a 15-minute window. After landing, you have to remain in your airplane until the custom agent comes out to your airplane and tells you you can get out. They then run a Geiger counter across the wings to make sure you're not carrying any nuclear weapons. The other option is flying to Cutbank, Montana, which is just across the border from Waterton Lakes National Park, and therefore avoid all the customs hassle. You can rent a car there and drive the hour and 45 minutes to get to the park. I would recommend crossing at Chief Mountain Border Crossing. There are no FBOs at Cutbank, and the winds are pretty significant, but they do have 2 intersecting runways. Rental cars are available, but they have to pick you up from town and bring you back to the airport when you're done. The third option is to fly into either Great Falls, Montana, or Glacier Park, which is in Kalispell. They are about equal distance from the park, which is approximately a 3-hour drive. Of the two, I would recommend Great Falls just because they have car rentals right at the FBO, and those rentals are going to be about 1/3 the price as they are at Glacier Park Airport. Either way, coming from the west is going to take you across the Rockies. This is a spectacular flight with unbelievable scenery. As you fly right over Glacier National Park, you'll see Going to the Sun Highway, Chief Mountain, and numerous mountain lakes. It takes about 2 hours in the Citation or 3 to 3.5 hours in the Bonanza. What about lodging? There are a number of really good options of where to stay in Waterton. Our favorite is Kilmorey Lodge. It burned down a number of years ago and has just recently been rebuilt and opened. It's like a brand new hotel. It lies on Emerald Bay, which is very quiet and scenic. It's also close to the main street and has a great restaurant on site. If you're looking for the National Park Lodge experience, then the Prince of Wales Hotel is absolutely spectacular. It sits on a bluff overlooking the lake and has a great restaurant. The rooms are small. The hotel was built 90 years ago, and it shows when the wind is picking up. One thing I would recommend no matter where you stay is to try and book high tea at the Prince of Wales Hotel. It's an unforgettable experience. You can sit right in the dining room overlooking the lake and have a wonderful lunch. As far as dining is concerned, there are a couple of restaurants I would recommend. First is Trappers on Main Street, which has excellent chicken and burgers. The other is the Lakeside Chop House, which is located right on the lake, so you have a spectacular views, but also they have a really good menu. We mentioned Kilmorey Lodge, which is an excellent fine dining option also. There's also pizza and some other fast food options in town. So what to do in Waterton? Hiking is probably the #1 activity in my mind as why to go to Waterton. And there are 3 must-do hikes you should consider. Our favorite hike is Carthew Summit. It's 12 miles long and it's one way. The trailhead starts at Cameron Lake, which is at the end of the Akamina Highway, about a 15-minute drive from town. You then walk back to the town hiking over the Carthew Summit, which is a little over 8,000 feet. You'll experience some of the most spectacular scenery and wildlife in the park. You pass 5 lakes and a number of small waterfalls. There is great fishing in the lower lakes, and it's a great place to stop, have lunch, and read a book. It's an all-day event, however. Bring bug spray, a fishing rod, and lots of water. I would also recommend carrying bear spray anywhere in the park. The fire in 2017 burned most of the trees along the trail, so there's not a lot of canopy for shade. The forest is rapidly coming back, however, and you'll see lots of fireweed and new pine trees making a comeback. Another favorite hike is Crypt Lake. To get to the trailhead, you have to take a boat across the lake. It's about a 10-mile hike round trip. It was ranked one of the top 10 hikes in North America by Backpacker magazine. You pass 3 waterfalls, climb through a tunnel, and then cross a cliff. in order to reach a pristine lake nestled in a mountain cirque. There's excellent cutthroat fishing, and oftentimes you'll see mountain goats in the area. Finally, an absolute must-do is Bear's Hump. It's only half a mile hike, but it's a very steep half a mile. The reward is one of the most spectacular views in the park. You're overlooking the town site and straight down the lake. It's usually windy on top, so bring a windbreaker. If you're not into hiking, there are a number of other excellent options. You can drive to Cameron Lake, which we mentioned before, rent a canoe and go fishing, or just tool around on the lake. It's a great place to have a picnic. There's lots of bear sightings, and again, it's one of the most beautiful mountain lakes you'll see. Red Rock Canyon is another must-see area. There are small nature hikes, but the main attraction is to go for a dip in the Red Rock Canyon stream itself. This is a nice, refreshing break from a hot day. Another absolute must is to take the international boat, which leaves the town site dock and takes you the 7 miles to the other end of the lake, which lies in the United States. Here you can disembark, and a park ranger is there to give you a tour and information about Glacier National Park. I'd bring your passport just for fun and get a stamp for the Goat Hunt Ranger Station. Another option is just to hang around town. There are souvenir stores, good restaurants, and ice cream parlors. On August 30th, 2017, after an intense lightning and thunderstorm, fire management staff in Waterton Lakes National Park detected a wildfire on Kino Mountain, about 10 kilometers from the park boundary in British Columbia. Exceptionally hot weather, strong winds, and extremely dry conditions fueled the extreme behavior of the Kino wildfire over the next week. Parks Canada worked closely with partner agencies and neighboring jurisdictions to prevent the spread of fire. An evacuation alert for Waterton Lakes was issued on September 5th, followed by evacuation order on September 8th. The wildfire firmly established itself in Waterton Lakes National Park on September 11th. Moving northeast along the Akamina Parkway, later in the evening, flames were visible from the town site and on the north side of Crandall Mountain. The wildfire began to move quickly, spreading through the grasslands along the entrance road. Overnight, the wildfire moved north and east out of the park and into the adjacent lands. In the end, the wildfire burned approximately 30,000 hectares, including 19,000 hectares in the national park. Over 80% of the hiking trail network was affected. In addition, the visitor center, Crandall Mountain Campground, many buildings on Canyon, youth camp, alpine stables, staff housing, and associated infrastructure such as water and electrical systems were destroyed. The Kino fire was a fire of exceptional severity. Under less severe circumstances, larger animals are usually able to flee a wildfire, and smaller animals may seek refuge underground. However, the Kino wildfire's rapid growth and extreme behavior created a situation where mortality of wildlife occurred. The fire moved quickly during the night, and the spread of growth compounded by heavy smoke limited the possibility for wildlife to escape its path. But many animals did survive. Healthy animals such as elk, deer, moose, bears, and sheep were observed within the fire area soon after, despite limited feeding opportunities. Over the years and seasons, the land has rejuvenated itself, and wildlife continued to thrive in Waterton Lakes National Park. Looking ahead, this landscape has evolved, and the fire will transform over time. Wildfires do occur naturally and fulfill critical ecosystem functions. So finding Wendy, one of the main reasons I wanted to return to Waterton was to find my old boss who I worked for nearly 53 years ago. She owned the only grocery store in town, Rod and Wendy's. I worked for her as a stock boy for 3 summers. She has since sold the grocery store and had started a restaurant called Trappers. I wasn't sure if she still owned Trappers or was even in the area. I decided to head to Trappers, and as I approached the front entrance of the restaurant, there she was sitting at the front counter. She did one of these, looked up, dropped her head, and then immediately looked up again. She recognized me instantly, and she had one of the biggest grins on her face that I've ever seen. She came out, gave me a huge hug, and proceeded then to feed us. Her husband, Rod, had died the year before, and she was heading out in a motorhome by herself to explore Alaska. She spent her winters in Mexico. I got the opportunity to spend many hours reminiscing with her. This made the whole trip worthwhile. Every year, pilots continue to fly inadvertently from visual flight conditions into instrument flight conditions, otherwise known as VFR into IMC, and the results are often fatal. In fact, VFR into IMC is the worst weather-related cause of accidents each year, with a fatality rate of 86% in non-commercial fixed-wing aircraft. And it's not only VFR pilots who get trapped. About one-third of these accidents involve instrument-rated pilots. To learn more, I would recommend you visit the AOPA Air Safety Institute's program, VFR into IMC, Avoidance and Escape. It'll be in the links below. So thank you again for watching. We have a number of videos coming up. I have a ton of footage from trips all summer long. I just haven't had time to put them together. But we'll be doing videos on Santa Fe, flying Route 66 in the Bonanza, and a few other product reviews. So again, thank you for following and thank you for subscribing.